Shalom. I just want to talk about the amazing speech that Prime Minister of Israel Netanyahu gave before a joint session of Congress the other day. This is 2011 in May. He spoke 15 years ago, and I remember vividly that speech and how powerful that was. And he speaks again 15 years later, and how many foreign leaders are asked to address a joint session of Congress. And it was really amazing. He did so right after his address at the AIPAC convention, which was the night before. That's the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee. Well, he spoke beautifully, and he got dozens and dozens of standing ovations from both sides of the aisle, which itself is wild. I mean, how many people could get up there and speak to both sessions of Congress, the House and the Senate, both houses, and get standing ovations from everybody? Really outstanding, because he's such an amazing world leader. In fact, Lori Cardozo-Moore, who you should get to know, she's an evangelical who does great work creating pro-Israel movies to get on Christian TV, evidently Facebooked from the AIPAC conference when he was speaking. He's the new leader of the free world, and certainly he is. I mean, who has a tougher job than Benjamin Netanyahu? Surrounded by Egypt, which seems to be moving into the Muslim Brotherhood orbit, Gaza, which is in the Iranian orbit, Hamas, and they are like the Al-Qaeda version of the Palestinians. Hezbollah controls Lebanon, Syria is in the Iranian orbit, and then you have to deal with Iran itself and all the other recalcitrant, hostile Arab nations, and tiny little Israel, which Netanyahu said is just a little bit bigger than Delaware and Rhode Island, each of them, would be 9 miles wide if you followed Obama's initial foray into this, suggesting you go back to 6 or 7 lines. But he was fantastic, and I wanted to mention a few of the points he made. First of all, he said, you don't have to do nation building with Israel. Israel's already built. You don't have to instill freedom and democracy in Israel. Israel's already democratic. You don't have to send troops to defend Israel. They defend themselves. And of course, he thanked the United States profusely for the help that they give in maintaining Israel's military edge against 300 million Arabs that mostly want to destroy her. Talked about Iran and the danger of nuclear weapons, and he said the only way to stop Iran is to make sure Iran knows that the military options are on the table. He said, and they're proceeding quickly on nuclear weapons, and once they get them, they're working on a missile to reach Washington. They'll be able to smuggle nuclear weapons into the cargo containers in any port in the U.S. Pretty soon put a nuke in a suitcase and put it anywhere in the world on a subway. And so they've got to be stopped. Then he talked about the Palestinians, and he reiterated some of the points he's made before. He said one of the hardest things he's ever had to do in his life was stand before his people and say, I accept the Palestinian state. Not easy. So if Abbas wants peace, which I don't think he personally wants, Netanyahu said, let him stand before his people and say, I accept a Jewish state. That's all he has to do to procure generous concessions from Israel about land. I accept a Jewish state. So Abbas, why don't you do that? And tear up that agreement you made with the Hamas. Why should Israel negotiate with the Palestinian version of Al-Qaeda? He said, why should they? Nobody else in the world would. And Israel thought they'd get peace when they pulled out of southern Lebanon and of Gaza. What they got instead were 12,000 missiles. And those missiles sometimes give you a minute warning. So we said to the House and the Senate, supposing you're sitting here and you get a siren, you got 1 minute to get to safety. Would you live that way? Well, why in the world would anybody expect Israel to live that way? Then again, he talked about the right to return. He said, you got to remember that 750,000 Jews were exiled from Arab lands, and Israel, tiny little Israel, in 1948 absorbed them. Nowhere in the world have refugees been absorbed by the country where they left. And so we think the great-grandchildren of the people that left Israel should return to the Jewish state and destroy it as a Jewish state. No, let them go to Palestine and have the right of return there. And then he said of the 300 million Arabs in the world, guess how many live in freedom? Only the 1 million Israeli Arab citizens. See, a lot of people don't know. There's 1 million citizens of Israel that are Arab Muslims. And they are the only Arabs in the whole world that live in freedom. So he said, Israel's not what's wrong with the Middle East. Israel's what's right with the Middle East. He said, once Israel feels that the Palestinians really want peace, they'll be generous in providing land for a Palestinian state. They've been helping Palestine all along. There's 10% growth in the territories. They're not hovels. They have movie theaters and shopping malls, and living a high-quality life, better than most Arabs in the Arab world right now. And it'll just get better once they want peace. He's really the true leader and giant of the free world, and you could just see the sense of admiration the Congress had for him. if you want to hear his 50-minute speech, which I definitely think you should hear, you should go on the internet and just find, it'd be easy to find, Benjamin Netanyahu's address to the joint session of Congress. Shalom.